Today I want to talk to you about this beautiful camera right here. Since unboxing the Blackmagic Pyxis 6K, the question I keep getting asked is, who is this camera really for? And after 4 months of using it, I do have an answer, but it might not be what you expect. It's not easy just to say this camera is perfect for you because it's a big responsibility and a very important decision. It's not like you're spending $10, $20 on a piece of equipment. It wouldn't be responsible for me just to recommend something that it might not be for you. Especially when starting out in videography, I didn't know what I needed back then. If you're like me, this might be your 10th review on a camera, hoping to get a clear decision on whether you should buy it or not. Hopefully this video helps a lot, and besides being a review, this is going to be my experience with the camera. And after 4 months of using it, I can say one thing. I absolutely love this camera, but this is not a camera for everyone. Let me explain why. Let me put this aside for 1 second. So from the moment I unboxed it, I knew this was going to be a beast. And I want to send a huge shout out to Blackmagic for sending me all of this equipment for me to test it out and give you guys a review. You have no idea how excited I was unboxing this camera. I was checking it out for a very long time since it was announced because I've never tried a Blackmagic before and I love the design. The first thing I noticed when I held it was the premium quality of the camera. It has a hefty feel, box style cinema body with all the buttons placed on one side and a huge screen on top of the buttons. This was a main talking point whenever it was announced, and we'll get to that later in the video. The box included a camera body, a power cable, and also a side plate to mount an SSD hard drive and hook it up to the camera. And this in a handle that came separately from the box, but I found it so useful whenever I started shooting. There was no external battery, so I had to buy one. The Pyxis 6K uses Sony BP U60 external batteries, CF Express Type B memory cards, and you can choose between different options for the lens mount. Mine is an L mount. So the size and weight really surprised me. It's much heavier than expected, but I really like that because most people, when they rig their cameras, they like to add a bit more weight just so they can avoid having shaky footage when shooting handheld. Also, it's much smaller than I thought it was. I was looking at videos and pictures of it and I thought it was a huge camera, but it's actually not that big and I could hold it with one hand right here. And this is my first time actually holding and using a box style cinema camera. It really felt like I was going to shoot a movie. So I wanted to start talking about the main thing for me, which is the Blackmagic ecosystem. If you don't know Blackmagic Design, it's the same company that created DaVinci Resolve, which is the best editing software for me. So using a Blackmagic camera in a Blackmagic software, it has major advantages. The biggest one being BRAW, which is a file format created by Blackmagic. That was the one thing that I was most excited about because I've never edited in BRAW before, and I really love color grading. What I've heard was that whenever you use BRAW files, the playback feels smoother and the color grading is way better. It exceeded my expectations. Really, it's one of the best colors I've seen in a footage before, and one of the major advantages is that whenever you record, you already have proxies attached to the file. That means that you can do playback with proxies and you can just run smoothly throughout the timeline with the colors if you want to see them. I know that if you add a lot of effects, even though if you have a fast computer, you're gonna have this choppy playback and you might have to turn it all off and just run through the timeline, but this makes it way better. For example, I'm going to show you a shoot that I did here in my kitchen with one light and it simply looks amazing. So imagine what you could do with a whole crew. But this is the best part yet, because if you don't care about technical stuff, codecs and files and color space, BRAW will completely change how you edit. Higher resolution doesn't mean higher quality videos. So shooting in 6K will not make your videos way better, but it will unlock a new level of flexibility in post-production because you can crop and zoom in without losing quality, and that's a huge plus because sometimes you have one camera and you need to use different framing or you have to fix the framing post, so shooting in 6K really helps. I know the new Pyxis 12K is out or will be out by the time I post this video, and I'm really excited to see some test footage because 6K, although it's very, very slight, you can see the resolution difference. So I will not buy a camera just because of resolution, but this is definitely a huge plus whenever you're editing and you need that extra room for cropping. The menu is so simple to use, very user-friendly. If you can see here, you only have 6 tabs. So you don't have a bunch of tabs or a bunch of menu pages that you have to scroll. It feels very logical almost, and with the big screen, you can read pretty easily all the labels. I like that the menu is very organized. and it almost feels logical the way they organize the tabs. So you have record, monitor, audio, setup, preset, and LUTs. I also like that everything is on the same side, the screen and the buttons, so no more guessing where each buttons are on the camera. One of my favorite features is the ability to shoot with specific aspect ratios straight from the camera. OpenGate was the aspect ratio I used the most, and it's one of those things that I have never used before, but once you use it, you can't go back. OpenGate is basically using the whole sensor of the camera, so you have a wider look in case you need more space, and you can crop it out later. Remember about that 6K, you can just crop it how you want without losing any quality. That's one thing that I'm not sure why all cameras don't have that, but let's just move on. So let's talk about the shooting experience. The camera box says the most riggable camera ever, which is something very interesting, and I do not doubt that. It's just that with my shooting style or with the things that I need, I don't need to rig it a lot. Just a handle, battery, and a monitor, which it came separately from the box, more than enough for what I do. I really like the shape on this camera because it feels natural. Because it's not a perfect cube, it's kind of like a little bit more rectangular, and that's one thing that I like the most, which is to be comfortable when I shoot. Also a huge plus for me, which is very specific and not that important, but to me I like that the mounting plate for the tripod, it fits perfectly on the shape of the camera, so I don't have to like balance it like a little bit more forward or backwards whenever I'm doing like a, like regular shaped camera. So two things that really stood out for me, mainly for interviews. One, the ability to mount an SSD using the side plate with a nice Velcro so it holds tight in the camera while recording. It's one of those things that you appreciate because the memory cards are very expensive. 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte memory cards, it's something that is not comparable to the price of a 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte hard drive. The price difference is not only because of the price, but because I really like having my footage already in the hard drive. I don't mind transferring the data or anything, but it's just saving some time. The other thing was the power cable. This is one thing that, every camera has, but I really like that it came in the box. So I just have the ability to just plug it in without an external battery. So that should be a lifesaver. One, if you're doing long interviews and you just need that unlimited battery. And two, if you forget your battery, you can just power it with just the power cable. This is not the best camera for low light. If you underexpose, you will see a lot of grain. I shoot in controlled environments mostly, so this is not a big issue for me, but if you do night events, concerts, or any type of shoot that relies on, natural lighting, I wouldn't recommend because you don't know if you're going to have those shadows and see that grainy footage. Different tools for different jobs. I just have to say the image quality is insane. All right, so let's get the technical stuff out of the way. In 6K, you can shoot up to 60 frames per second. Except for OpenGate, you can shoot up to 36 frames per second. And 6K DCI, which you can shoot up to 48 frames per second. So in 4K DCI, you can shoot up to 60. And in HD, you can shoot up to 120 frames per second. Super 16, you can shoot up to 100 FPS. But the specs just tell part of the story. It's just the basic stuff. But when you see how this camera handles highlight, then you're going to see the real capabilities of this camera and how it really feels like cinema. So highlight roll-off is how the bright areas transition into pure white. This image handles that highlight roll-off beautifully and very soft, and it feels very cinematic. I don't like to slap that word around because cinematic entails a whole of different components like composition, lighting, etc. But it feels different. With 13 stops of dynamic range, you have a lot of details to work with, a lot of flexibilities, and the color science is just out of this world. This is the best looking colors I've ever seen on a camera that I've used. Because I've seen a lot of cameras that handle colors very well, but like I said, using this color science BRAW on DaVinci Resolve and also working in a DaVinci Resolve color space, it just elevates the whole color grading experience, which is my favorite part of the whole post-production process. So that's the part where it really shines. Everything feels seamless. It's the richness of the color and the fine-tuning that really makes the difference, and I've been able to achieve some colors that I haven't with any other cameras yet. So although I'm a huge fan of Blackmagic and their products, this camera is not perfect. The number one thing is there's no autofocus. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you don't have autofocus, you have certain limitations. For example, if you're recording yourself, it's not as easy as if you have the camera just focusing by itself. You need to be manual focusing everything or just have it still and try not to move around that much. Also, whenever you're working with a very shallow depth of field, probably less than f2.8, You're gonna have a hard time just following someone even with handheld shooting, just because it's not easy. Even if you're the best focus puller, you're not gonna be able to nail it. With autofocus, it does it for you. So in addition to that, the other point is that self-filming is difficult. Since you don't have autofocus and the screen is not tiltable, you're gonna have a hard time trying to keep up with whatever you're recording, unless you have an external monitor, which costs extra money. This camera was created specifically for slightly bigger productions and just prioritizing image quality. Also, I don't know if this has happened to you, but whenever I record myself, I might be placing my camera in some tight spaces. So having that camera, for example, that screen next to a wall, I have to look over and trying to see whatever I'm recording. It's not like you can move it around. So like I said, external monitor is going to be your best friend if you are recording yourself with this specific camera. The next thing will be size limitations. Although it's not a very huge camera, this is not a camera that you would just simply mount on a gimbal or on a suction cup outside of a car or any tight spaces. It has its limitations because of size, but you can always work around it. I seen a FX6 being on a gimbal, so I don't think that's an issue. Plus, I don't use gimbals that much, so it's not a deal breaker, but definitely something to have in mind. The other thing would be that there was no battery in the box. And this was a surprise for me because all the cameras that I have used and all the equipment that requires a battery usually comes with the battery. I'm not sure if this is something that's very common, but definitely something to be aware that you're going to have to buy that external battery. And lastly, other things that I have to mention that they're no deal breakers, but definitely something worth mentioning is that there's no IBIS, which is the internal body image stabilization. There is just one XLR output, and also it's not weather sealed. If you see on top, you have a vent that just you can look inside of the camera. All of those things that I mentioned really don't matter as much to me because one, I don't shoot under extreme weather conditions. 2, I should record my audio and an external recorder. And 3, the image stabilization, you can work around it. You don't need to rely heavily on that. Plus, there are many ways to fix that. And this is the part that's most exciting. If you're willing to work around those limitations, the image quality that you get is unmatched. So this is how I would answer the question of who is this camera really for? Right out of the gate, I'm going to say that if you are a beginner filmmaker or a beginner videographer, I would not recommend this camera. If you do weddings, events, concerts, this is sadly not the camera for you because you need to be efficient in those type of scenarios. You need to have autofocus, you need to be able to mount it anywhere, you need that low light capabilities. But if you work as a solo filmmaker, commercial filmmaker, independent film, documentary, short documentaries, this camera will give you one of the best image quality there is. Also, the price tag I saw in B&H is right now it's under $3,000, so around like $2,600. It's something to have in mind because most cameras are around $3,000, $4,000 and up depending on what you're looking at. But the image quality that you get here for the price is something that you barely see. But remember, when you start, you need to only use the tools that are necessary. Gear is important. It's not like, oh no, I don't need a camera. You need the camera to record, the lens, but this should not be limitation. Whenever you reach that limit or whenever you reach the potential of that specific equipment, that's when you upgrade and that's when you start looking at things in a different perspective. If you use DaVinci Resolve, BRAW is one of the best things I've ever used. Definitely try that out as well. And if you like the video, I would love if you subscribe for more upcoming stuff and also give me your opinions on this camera. Will you buy this camera for the first time? Will you pair it as a B cam? Or will you just get it for fun? Who knows? And don't be scared of the box style shape because I know I felt like I needed a lot of people around me to help me figure it out, but you can just do it by yourself. It's just take a little bit more of focusing and being aware of things, but I encourage you to step out of that comfort zone to see it for yourself. So thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next video.